Hi, everybody. It's Alex Jarett with another edition of Technology Executives Review. That's our video show and podcast. And again, that's me, Alex Jarett, your host and founder of Technology Executives Club and Technology Executives Review. And it's brought to you by Technology Executives Club. Alan, I think I say that too much. Everybody knows who it's brought to. And
Yeah.
watch all of our videos at technologyexecutivesclub.com. And we got a new, in addition to the podcast, which is called Technology Executives Review on Spotify and Apple, we also have our YouTube channel, Technology Executives Review, also. And we're starting to populate all of our videos there. Okay, so today I want to introduce you to Allen Darrah, who's the CIO at Spencer Fane. Hi, Allen.
Hey, Alex. Great to be with you.
It's great to have you here. Now, Allen is the CIO at Spencer Fane, which is a law firm. And I've talked to a couple of their attorneys, a very smart firm. And you've been expanding like for the last 5, 6 years, like tremendously, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Since I arrived in 2015, that's been central to the work we do is growth. And added just 30 new colleagues actually this week in our newest office in Las Vegas. We've
Wow.
grown. Yeah, we've grown. Gosh, I think we've grown about over 4 times since I arrived. So the growth has been just gangbusters.
That's great. And if you haven't seen Alan's interview, we just posted his interview recently. Go watch that interview. You'll learn all about Alan. And so thanks for doing that, Alan. Really good interview about how Alan started originally as in law school.
Yeah.
I love this story. You started in law school and you started doing consulting on the side, and then one job led to another, and you all of a sudden were doing IT, and now you're the CIO of a law firm, which it's like full circle.
That's
And
right.
you're actually affecting a lot of lives in a positive way. So we appreciate you. And for those of you who also don't know, Alan, you're associate professor, I'm going to say this right, at Columbia, right?
Yeah. I'm on the faculty at Columbia University. And I'm also just found out very recently I'm going to have the opportunity to be a guest lecturer at Northeastern University. So really it's interesting the things you don't expect to happen in your life, right? So I'm also kind of headed down this academic path as well. At the same time, it's a blast.
That's great. Well, good for you. Well, we're happy to have you here. And the topic that you chose is innovation versus regulation, how to break barriers by bending the rules. Now,
Yeah.
you probably should say this is not legal advice,
I'm
right?
not an attorney. This is not legal advice. Legal advice is available.
That's right. We can get you legal advice, but this is not legal advice. And where did this topic come from? Well, obviously it's AI and technology. I think we were talking about AI, but you tell me, what is this topic all about?
Yeah, the conversations that I think a lot of organizations are having right now are around topics that, the phrase digital disruption is not new.
Yeah.
And trying to digitize our businesses is not new. The concept of every company is a technology company is not new. But I think the speed of these conversations has accelerated to such a rate that those of us who are kind of inside the walls trying to get the work done, the mysteries of trying to unravel the mysteries of everything around us all at the same time, because we feel like we're being bombarded by people who are coming to us and wanting new things, and they want us to add and build and create while also protect, right? And so I've had just some amazing conversations with my colleagues, even inside. But then as I expand those conversations outside, I find out that a lot of folks at other organizations are dealing with the same things. And what I think everyone who is in a position like mine is trying to balance is, I don't want to do harm. I want to innovate. I want to build. I want to be, at my core, I think we all like to create, but we've also built, a lot of us, such good guardrails over the last 20 years. And I think a lot of us are trying to figure out if those guardrails are still relevant, or if they should be moved, or if they should be toppled down.
Huh.
And so trying to figure out how to maybe some of the rule set that we've built for the right reasons over the last, for me, 5 or 7 years or so, making sure that I'm kind of still true to that and not causing harm by trying to build the cool stuff that everybody wants, because I want that stuff too, right? So that was maybe the impetus for this topic. I feel like it's very relevant for tech leaders right now.
Well, what would be an example of one of these guardrails that you're talking about, just to put some context in it?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest one is data management.
Yeah.
And so, AI, for example, I mean, AI, of course, is still the sexy hot topic that everyone's talking about right now. And I think that will be the case for the next 5 or 10 or 15 years, right? So it's here.
Yeah.
And no matter your thoughts on AI and kind of, is it overhyped? Is it underhyped? Is it going to change the world? Is it going to destroy the world? I mean, we're going to fall somewhere on that spectrum. And I was talking with one of the heads of AI at Bloomberg Law. And so Bloomberg, of course, does a lot of work with the legal industry, but they've got their hands in so many things like media and lots of, they just have such a good perspective on so many things. And he said, if your organization does not have the data management program in place, then don't worry about AI yet. You are not in a position to really focus on AI. You need to get your house in order first. And so that was kind of maybe the beginning of me really thinking deeply on this topic. And kind of a mantra of mine also kind of comes into play, which is, communication leads to trust, and trust leads to freedom.
Yeah.
And so any of us, we have to have freedom in our roles, especially as we grow and we're more senior in our organizations. And so if you are going to achieve the freedom to be able to do the things that you want to do and be innovative and build new programs and build new products, then you have to walk backwards towards that trust. And the trust is only built when you communicate. And one of the greatest forms of communication, in my opinion, is written, right? And so writing out all of your programs and your policies when it comes to your data management, I think, is critical. I've lost count of how many times the lawyers have come to me and said, yeah, but where's that policy? Show it to me, and then I'll follow it, right?
Yeah.
And so they want it to be written, and they're looking for it. And then, so it's our opportunity and our job, I think, as leaders, not just tech leaders, but risk leaders and anyone who kind of is responsible or could be responsible for this topic, to get your hands on it and start writing out what you want this to look like, the business plan, the policies, the procedures.
That's a good insight. I mean, you said a lot of good insights in that. So I think the point is that technology is shifting everything. And if you look
that's interesting you say that, Alex, and maybe kind of jumping on that thought is, I don't think it's shifting the foundations that build strong businesses. What is built on top of those foundations is changing for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that solid,
you like net profit?
Well, no doubt.
Yeah.
And as it's almost like, just under the sand in the desert, it's cool and calm.
Yeah.
But above the sand, it could be winds whipping at 70 miles per hour and sand in your eyes, right? And so if your foundation is good, that is going to keep you solid at your organization in perpetuity almost, right? I mean, that's what builds lasting organizations that can weather these really dynamic times. And if you're not focusing on that, maybe at the beginning, or not just at the beginning, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, if you're not revisiting it and making sure that your foundation still makes good sense and focusing on the basics, then it's really hard to do the fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, let's keep talking about that. So, what I was trying to say is that technology, here's an example of what I mean when I say AI is changing everything. It's obviously a pretty global statement. I was, on LinkedIn, I reposted this little graphic that was showing how people meet people. And from like 1960 something to today. And in 1965, let's just pick that. I forgot the exact date, but it was like, let's say 1968. There was no such thing as online dating. People met people through friends, through family, through church, through activities. through school.
Hmm.
Actually, in the beginning, it wasn't even college. That rose, and there were like 12 categories and graphs where somebody, says this year, this year, this year, and you can see the bars going up and down. And at the very end of it, which is today, it's almost exclusively online dating, and I think to the detriment of relationships. Because I listen. I'm not knocking online dating. It's the system, but you know that has clearly changed
Hmm.
the way dating occurs today. So that's changing. So now we say healthcare. How is healthcare being delivered? Now we have online doctors.
Yeah,
We have
yeah.
online psychologists. We have online get your I watch old movies, and for some reason on the old movie channel they have these ads. you know, get your mixed pills, or
Right.
get this to help your knees, or get this. So it's changing. It's changing. So I guess what I'm saying is the delivery of goods and services, the process
Mm.
is changing. So if you're in a company and you're trying to solve people's problems or your customers' problems, and you're going to innovate, how that's going to change, it's those processes that you're going to change,
Yeah,
right? And it
and I
might
think
be the problem that you change too.
you hit a key word, Alex, which I think is delivery.
Yeah,
And I think how companies deliver what they do is definitely, maybe again thinking about the wind over the sand, right?
yeah,
It is definitely um, unrecognizable generation over generation, the way that
right.
just we interact with society. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think, when we talk about innovation, you know, the innovation is it could be the customer, it could be the problem that you're solving, it could be uh, what process you're doing to solving it. So in a law firm, you're writing a
Hmm.
brief, right? You have to write a brief. The court needs a brief. How is that being written? And do you use Chat GPT public? Do you use ChatGPT private? Do you use your own LLM, or do you get one from, one of the law services? I'm sure they all have the APIs now and they're connected and being careful with it, you know. So that's the dilemma. So I think this is an interesting topic when we say bending the rules. So let's get into what your first subtopic is called. You call it balancing the tightrope of fostering innovation while ensuring compliance. Tell us what you mean by that, and then maybe give us a couple examples.
Yeah, great. Happy to. So, you know, really kind of goes back to the foundation topic, right? I think
Yeah,
that, you know, as long as we're placing an emphasis on kind of how mature is your organization and how is it able to handle the dynamism of change, right?
uh,
And so that's critical. It really kind of sets the stage for everything that you want to do when it comes to innovating. I was watching a talk at NYU Law, and they were talking about the brief, right?
uh,
And so writing legal documents.
oh,
And ultimately, the conversation was very interesting because they were talking about what if your law firm's AI writes the brief
yeah,
and submits it to the court, and the opposing counsel's AI writes a counter brief and
yeah,
submits it to the court, who's doing legal work, right? Uh, is it the lawyers? Is it the tech companies that wrote that AI?
yes,
I'm leaning towards it might be a little bit more the latter than
yeah,
the former. And that is going to be very interesting for not just the society's access to justice, right? But ultimately for society at large, as more and more companies' AIs are actually just having the conversation on our behalf. And
yeah.
so thinking about
Agents,
that,
the agents are going to get more and more robust,
yeah, yeah. And so
and
in the
that's what you're
legal world,
talking about. Yeah,
what we talk about a lot inside the law firm, and I think all law firms and lawyers talk about this because it's what they're taught in law school, is the attorney must supervise the work of everyone around them before it goes out the door, effectively, whether you be a paralegal or a professional member of the organization like me. Everything that we do is supposed to be supervised by an attorney, and
Yeah.
then ultimately they, as the client manager, own that as it
Yeah.
goes out the door, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, it kind of gets back to the conversation about AI. Is the core of the country's and the world's attorneys ready to supervise AI? How adept are they at understanding what goes on behind the scenes? Are these tech companies sharing their notes on how the algorithms work and how it makes decisions and why it chose to write a brief with this information versus that information? Did it
Yeah.
leave anything out intentionally or unintentionally? You can see how this is going to get really complicated and
It's going to get
interesting.
messy. There's no
It's
way
going
it's not going to get messy. So look, the music industry.
to,
Okay, how is the legal industry going to be any different than the music industry in the future if you think about it? You know, uh, look what happened when music went online to the industry and people started sharing songs and things like that. So, you know, and this is going to sound crazy, but remember the original RoboCop?
yeah,
There
I
was,
do.
yeah, there was a scene. I'm going to do another podcast, which is looking at these movies and saying, is this real? Could
I look
this
forward to
happen?
your pop fiction
Yeah,
podcast,
yeah, it's
Alex.
coming. It's coming soon. No joke. Coming soon. So I like that, by the way. So, but think about it. I remember a scene there where the RoboCop showed up and they had the trial and jury right there. And
Yeah,
they did the execution.
right. Yeah.
Just talking about a movie, folks. But think about it. Okay, you're right. You've got a law firm here, law firm A, law firm B. The briefs are being written. Now we got today, it's somebody is a paralegal, the youngest associate is writing
Mhm.
the brief, and the lawyer has to, you got 10 of these people, and okay, that looks good, edit that. Look at now you got Chat GPT in between or something in
That's right.
between, right? Okay, associate with computer, with AI, gives it to somebody, and now let's say 5 years from now, that's cleaned up more. It's the review process has changed. The submission may be changed. Maybe for certain classes of things, nobody looks at it. You have access to our proprietary thing, and then I can see that future, Alan. I can
Yeah.
see that happening,
Yeah.
and so can you.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, even the topic on the screen, let's turn that into a bit of a question. I mean, how do
yeah,
we
how do you do it?
ensure compliance while being innovative? And as you would imagine, thinking about, again, that mantra, the freedom of an attorney or their
Yeah.
team to use these tools goes back to trust, and the trust is built on communication. And so, in what we're working on right now, for example, is the communication piece so that we can build a good foundation where folks are able to use these very, I think, again, innovative, fun, cool, you name it. You
Yeah.
insert your favorite adjective here. I mean, these tools are great for a lot of things. I've been using them. I'm sure a lot of folks have, playing with them. What can it help me do? Can it help me organize my day? And those I think are useful, but really the money is going to get into it, and it's going to be worth it, I should say, when these things are actually helping us do our professional work. And so, but how do you do that? So it's going back to communication. We're already talking with our folks about, hey, if you're going to use these tools, and when you start using these tools, you have to understand them. You have to understand how they work and what are the guardrails and what things are we putting in place? What things do you need us to put in place? As we have conversations with the vendors, what questions would you ask if you were in the room? Can you actually come and join us for some of these conversations with these legal tech providers, right? And so getting the folks involved who are actually going to be using these, I think, is critical. Now, I'm talking about the legal industry, but that goes for whatever
Doesn't matter
industry
what industry
anyone
you're in.
happens to be
Yeah.
in, is involve your user base now, ahead of you rolling these tools out, so that you can use good design thinking and figure out what is it actually going to look like. Do not, as a technologist or a tech department or an IT department, try
Yeah.
and do all this by yourself. You are setting your
You
company
can't.
up for a lot of risk.
Well, there's so many topics that you've touched on there. First of all, they're doing it whether you tell them to do it or not.
That's right.
It's like the cell phone. This is again. We have another guy in our another executive on our board of advisors, and you know him, Tom Dress,
Yes.
and he
Yeah.
talks about the consumerization of IT, and he talks
That's
about
right.
when Windows showed up, when the cell phone showed up. Do you remember when the cell phone first showed up? We were all being careful about what we should do with these cell phones, and
Right.
everybody was
Yeah.
just doing it.
Yeah.
The same thing is happening with, not just ChatGPT, but the myriad of API-driven apps that are really being driven by the 3 or 4 big AIs out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And but the topic is, I think maybe what you're saying is let people experiment with it, but you've got to have some framework, Alan, so you have those checks and balances, especially for what you do. A human has to review this stuff. I mean, look, I went in there the other day, I was watching a movie, I watch too many movies. So I was watching a movie and I'm looking up I was talking to someone about this movie and this actress. And I go, oh, she was in that movie. And so I looked up, I couldn't remember her name, and I looked up on something called Ask AI, which is driven by ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And so I'm on there and I say, oh, list all the cast for this movie. They didn't list the lady that I knew was in the movie.
Yeah.
So then I went to IMDb, whatever the official site, and then I found her, and which was crazy. So this stuff lies.
Yeah, sure enough. Just
it
yesterday,
guesses, and it lies.
Just yesterday, I read a really interesting article about someone who codes a lot. So the new engine that they have in OpenAI's ChatGPT is also has some better coding, or so they say, right?
So this
professional software developer was actually looking through 100 results of all of his queries and all the things that he wanted it to test, right? So he was effectively spent his day testing this new feature and how it was going to impact what he does for a living. And 99 out of 100 of the results were beautiful. It was very beautiful code, but it was all wrong. Only one of them was right. Ultimately, would actually work in the real world, right? And so that was his experience.
It doesn't tell you.
And to a layperson, or perhaps maybe again getting back to my world, thinking about the legal industry, to a layperson, if I think that I'm going to be able to go into even these most sophisticated and latest engines in these GPT programs, and it's going to give me good legal advice, 99 out of 100, it's not really a good hit rate for failure, right? So be careful.
So I think the lesson here is we're kind of all forced to experiment, and you're saying bending the rules, but there's the balancing act that we're all kind of going through is where can you play and where can you not play, and you've got to sort of tweak the framework as you go. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe focusing in on the bending the rules. What do I mean when I say that?
Yeah,
it's
again, this is not legal advice.
Yeah, right. That's right. But ultimately, I think it comes down to evidence-based and testing, right? So
there you go.
Think of it, obviously you could say trust but verify. Maybe don't trust and verify, right?
I think so.
Yeah, and I think if, for example, our law firm right now has an internal guidance from our internal counsel.
Yeah.
That says if you're going to you went out to the firm and the attorneys, and it says if you're going to use these tools, you must test, verify, validate to an extreme extent at this point. And so, and don't, her recommendation, the general counsel's, was don't actually use these for legal work. You are performing the legal work, right? And so that, I think, has set us up so that folks feel free that they're able to kind of play within the rules, they're able to test these things. They're able to, understand how they actually run, and how does a query work, and how does a prompt work, and what kind of prompts do what I hope they do versus prompts that are kind of, they're mediocre versus those that are very poor. It's good to start learning that stuff now.
Yes.
But ultimately, you still have to perform the work that goes out the door. And so I think that's good guidance. I think a lot of law firms fall into that category right now, where that's where they feel like they're going to get the best bang for their buck out of these tools is effectively, again, this is a big test period. So you're able to play within the rules. And you're able to start testing and talking with each other. And hey, when you ran this prompt, what were you happy with the result? If not, why not? Again, these are important conversations, especially as kind of the newer generation of attorneys who are coming out of law school and are young in their careers. These tools are going to be native to them. It's like the iPad generation.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so it's important for the entire multi-generational organization to understand what this is going to look like over the next, say, 50 years, not just 5.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing, and we're going to get to the next slide, is you've got to create whatever this works out for you, some environment of play, but you're bending the rules. What you're not doing is saying it's open recess. It's not open recess.
Yeah, not too far in either direction. This is the floodgates have not opened, but it's also not completely restricted. I think that's just as dangerous, because then, like Tom would say, folks are going to figure out a way to do it themselves because it's so consumerized.
That is dangerous. Yeah, they're just going to, if you don't have any kind of help and guidelines, they're going to do it. And in the legal sense, they're going to put the brief in there and they're going to say, check it at first. And then they're going to say, next they'll say, hey, let's write it. Oh, that's pretty good. And then they're going to come up with but if they don't verify that it's actually a real, what do you call it when you look up a case and say, as said in this case, what's that called?
Citations. Right?
Yeah. If it's a made up citation, because at the end of the thing, and I remember this was a real thing, somebody submitted a made up citation, one of their briefs, like about 5 months ago. And, AI it's not programmed to tell you it's lying. It makes the stuff, it makes some of it up. And then it says, this is 95. We think this is 95% accurate. Well, if it's the one thing that was the most important thing, great. Having said that, I've been using it for marketing emails and stuff like that. And it does help me, it saves me time on the structure.
Absolutely.
Write like 6 emails.
These are some of my favorite things that it's able to do. And for example, two examples. One, you just mentioned, helping me kind of organize my own day, or organize, hey, here's an email that I'm working on. Is this, think about the format. Is this in the right order? Should I move this paragraph for readability purposes? Or, like one of the prompts that I really like is, help me edit this email for maximum readability by this type of audience, right?
That's a good one.
It's very good at that.
Yeah.
And it's caught a few things where my sentence structure that I've always learned my entire career is maybe a little convoluted and I need to move a few things around. I think that's pretty common for a lot of us.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful at that. And then another thing that we found is internal meetings. So maybe here's a good example of where we're able to kind of play within the rules is because we feel comfortable with the data management and the guardrails that we've built around it is stuff like Copilot's ability to summarize a meeting that you were just in.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this my entire career. It's like the old days of being able to have a professional note taker in the room with you. That went away decades ago. We lost that capability within our organizations for someone who's just there to take notes.
Stenographers, be careful.
Well, and in most corporate settings, does that role even exist anymore? Probably not. And so someone who is a professional note taker and is able to go through the transcription and here's the summary of the meeting, here's the executive summary of the meeting, here are the 3 main takeaways, and here are the action items. Alan, here's what you said you would accomplish, and here's the deadline you said you would accomplish it by. Wow,
It's
finally.
all awesome until we give them the key, give the machine the keys.
Well, yeah,
And
fair, but
that's
go back to if you've built the guardrails, if you've gone in and you've taken that, for us, it
yeah,
took almost 3 full days to go through all of the settings. And we actually had an outside expert come in and help us tune those settings so that we had the right data retention rules. The records management team was involved so that anything that was created in those meetings, it still fits within our guidelines. So
that's
that's playing
interesting.
within the rules, but still trying to innovate even internally.
See, yeah. Okay, so let's get to that. Engage stakeholders in governance that doesn't stifle creativity. That's the total phrase. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and it's getting people involved.
Yeah.
People are excited about this topic, so now is a great time to do it. Everything that we're talking about today, in my opinion, if you're not just a tech leader, but especially if you're a tech leader, it's your responsibility to host some events around
Uh-huh.
some of the stuff that's going on right now. Get people just to, they are already excited. Get them involved, involve that excitement. It's, I think, a core part of design thinking. Those of us who have studied design thinking, or actually, I have great friends who that is actually the focus of their career. They are rich with ideas on how to involve your
Yes.
user base.
Yes. Yes.
And so spend a day learning about that. If that's not a topic that means anything to you, if I say design thinking and you think, I don't know what he's talking about, go dive in for one day. It
Oh,
will serve you the rest of your career.
I just talked
And,
to somebody who is getting a degree in design
mhm.
for she's a customer experience executive and she's getting a degree in it. And if you're listening to this or watching this and don't realize that where we're headed is it's going to act and sound like humans and look like humans more and more. Just pretend you're in real Westworld. That's what I say. And it's going to say, Alan, what would you like for your burger, which is being cooked by the robot?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
Alan, you've been here every time you come here, you order, you know, 2 cheeseburgers with ketchup,
yeah.
mustard, and pickles. We think that's what you want, right?
Alan, would you like the usual?
Yeah, Alan. Yes, it's going to sound and look like a person. So,
So
I
let's
like
double
to.
down on that. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
let's double down on that. Is
that's
thinking about
design
your
thinking.
role as a leader.
Yeah,
If you are the one hosting these conversations and hosting these events and hosting your user base, you will be seen as the expert on these topics, even as you are learning about them too. I mean, I don't know anybody. I've even talked with, AI engineers at MIT. They would be the first to tell you they're not experts per se on a lot of these things, right? Because there's so much happening so fast,
uh-huh.
even underneath. I mean, so that is its own topic, how fast these things are moving and how to gain kind of that level of expertise. So I'm not going to try and dive into that, but I think your role as a leader is to be seen as the leader. And so host these things and start getting people involved. People are going to be very excited to attend. They're
Yeah,
going to be well attended. And then what you're able to do then is you're able to use their ideas for your creativity,
yeah.
right?
This is
And
good
so
innovation. Yeah,
it also is an opportunity at the beginning of these conversations to teach them about how important the governance is, the guardrails, right? I like to use the word guardrails. That makes a good sense for most folks because you
you're
want to be
still
able to move
driving.
around,
You just got to be
right?
careful. There's
Yeah,
there's
just don't
guardrails.
go in the
Yeah,
ditch,
yeah.
right?
Or over the edge.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
That's good. That's good. So that's good practical example of how to engage stakeholders to start doing these activities in these events. I talked to somebody else who has an innovation system and they're very keen about listening and they have a defined process for people to submit ideas. They have these things that you're talking about, which are these activities and events. And I think communication right now and collaboration with a community that you create inside the organization is really essential. And I think that's what you're talking about. And then
Yeah.
it gives you the chance to teach. And in cybersecurity, it's always it's education and be aware. And I think we have the same issue going on with AI now, where you have to teach people what can happen, and I think that's your opportunity to do it.
That's an awesome parallel, Alex. I mean, thinking about the conversation that I personally have had over the last decade, which is for the most part all around cybersecurity.
Yeah, be aware.
Teaching folks about cybersecurity and systemic technology risk and all the things that ultimately have become kind of common, I think, relatively common within the business world and maybe even society at large right now is you go back in time to 2014, 10 years. Folks didn't understand a lot of the core and basic concepts of cybersecurity, but we just had to keep hammering it and beating that drum and inviting people and having conversations about it. Now that has changed significantly, at least in my view. What I see is folks get it now, right? And so I think now we're in a position where we're able to even,
they're much
you
more
can
aware of
even
it.
build on that conversation. Right.
Yeah.
So, I've been in a position where I've been able to be seen as the cyber expert within my organization. I've had the opportunity to go speak on that topic now at outside organizations. Right. Well, why? Because I'm inviting people to come and talk with me about these things. And so you can use that model to build yourself too, right? If this is an area where you're super interested and you want to learn more and you want to be at the forefront of it and you actually want to get to a position where you're seen as the expert, AI is going to be an opportunity for you to build a part of your career that wasn't really there just a couple of years ago.
Let's get into the next topic, which is implement policies that encourage smart risk taking for growth. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Taking advantage, I think, of these dialogues that you're creating, right? And these venues for folks to give you both positive and negative feedback and ask questions and get involved in our world so that because they're very interested in these topics, is an opportunity for you to talk with them about how this is just part of risk management. Risk and creativity kind of go hand in hand. And so being transparent about the things that you're scared of while you're having these conversations gives them an opportunity and gives you an opportunity to hear live what solutions there might be, or what they're also scared of, because those are risks too, right? And so, for example, within the law firm, I have had some great conversations with some of our attorneys who are kind of scared in both directions, right? And so they're thinking about AI in the right way. They're thinking about the risks of not doing it and the risks of doing it. And so it's an opportunity for you to potentially help counsel and lead them, no matter what they do for a living in your organization. And I think that those can actually turn into policies that help drive these things. I think, policy-driven decision-making really kind of is supposed to speed us up. And a lot of folks don't think about it that way.
That's a really good insight.
An organization with very solid policies and procedures is faster than one without them, because you don't have to make it up on the fly every single time.
You don't have to
I
ask.
believe in that to my core.
Yeah. So what I heard is, in a previous few minutes ago, we were talking about, create the framework, write it all down, create the framework, get the policies out. Now you're saying, since let your community experiment, have open communication, so and you have meetings that are so about these issues. So when these issues come up, the policymaker can make those policies.
That's right.
Yeah. That's I like that model that you've just created. You've created a fluid way of allowing people to drive on the edge of the cliff, but not go over the guardrail, basically.
That's an awesome analogy. As someone who
I'm not sure it's a great one, but
as someone who just took a long road trip in Colorado, I mean, it is really on your mind that right there is the edge.
Yeah, that's the edge. That's not a dream. That's not a video game. That is really the edge.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
Yeah, and going back to the concepts of design thinking,
yeah,
for us, as we maybe unofficially or officially are also risk managers, it is such a tool. It is such a tool for us. And so building these conversations and communication pathways, creating a feedback loop, where you are iterating constantly with your user base. Well, I mean, think about this concept. I only last year was promoted to CIO. And so up to that point, I was really thinking about what my role as IT director, how does it change as I become an executive technology leader? What are
Yeah.
hallmarks of that?
Yeah.
And obviously, I think there's a lot of really good books and things like that about in terms of changing. You're no longer the tech expert. You're no longer actually in the coding, or you're no longer building the servers that go in the racks and things like that. You are hopefully succession planning someone to do that on your behalf effectively. So what does a senior or executive, even technology leader, do?
Yeah.
They are communicating 90+% of their day. And I think that's pretty universal for whether you're a finance executive, a marketing executive, you name it, is your role now is part teacher, but ultimately part risk manager. And at the end of the day, you are a facilitator.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think using the concepts of, again, design thinking and these communication pathways and building these things and showing that you actually kind of showing off a little bit, showing even internally to your organization, like you have an expert working here, I think is a pretty healthy way actually to approach that. And so again, you can have these conversations, get the people involved and start sharing. And one of the phrases that I really like is I like to share my pain. And I happen to have the great fortune of working with a lot of attorneys, and some of them are incredibly savvy and very smart.
Yeah.
The IQ of an attorney is typically, that profession is higher than most other fields, and so I get to leverage their IQ as well. And so they're also really talented at finding problems. That's what they do for a living.
Yeah.
And so you can present an idea to them and say, what are the things that you think I'm going to run into here? Well, what you've done there is actually twofold. One, at the surface, they're helping you find the problems, obviously, but you've also subtly planted the idea in their heads that this is going to happen. And so that savviness just beneath the surface is actually what gets them thinking like, oh, I was actually part of this. And then a year later, when it gets rolled out firm wide or organization wide, they have some ownership in it. And so they're also not going to put up as many barriers anymore when it comes to actually accepting it, which is something that I ran into when I first got here is, we would try and roll out new technology that we knew was a great idea for the organization. And that ultimately, if people would just get their hands on it, they'd love it. But human beings in general are very cautious and they're very avoidant, right? But then in this instance, you start to get them involved very early and you start communicating with them. Again, communication, then trust, then freedom. It builds that pathway to getting the things done that need to be done.
Man, you're a deep thinker.
I try, Alex. That's a high compliment to me. I appreciate you saying that.
Well, I just love talking to you. I'm sure everybody's going to love listening to you. We're going to get you on here more, but this has really been a great conversation. I want to shift over to another topic. I'm doing more and more in this show, and I think we were joking before. Maybe we'll do another show about society and our future and how it's affecting all of us. And you and I talked before this, and we kind of hit on a topic as we were getting ready for today, that who is running the service? And you said it earlier in this conversation. You said it when we were getting ready too. Who is running the infrastructure? Who is running the service? Is it the people that we all are electing and are trusted to do this, or are hired to do this, or is more and more of it becoming the technology? And I'll give everybody an example of what we're talking about. And this could apply in any field. This could apply in legal, it could apply in healthcare, it could apply and I'm using civil services here. It can apply in terms of enforcement. It can apply in a lot of issues. You name your category, you can probably make a story in a movie because it's changing. It can apply in insurance. It can apply in a law firm, and it can apply in, delivery of goods and services. But who is really running the service? So if we say that it's legal, which you're in law, and we say, okay, let's look, we talked about how the brief is written. But if we flip it and we say, how is the brief read?
Yeah.
How is the brief read? Who's reading the brief? Who's choosing, well, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. And my prediction, I want to get your thoughts, is that as these systems get implemented, and it's already happening, I'm sure, the systems of reading the briefs and posting them are already there. As we start to apply, as somebody starts to apply AI, what is this brief? Summarize it for the judge.
Yeah.
That's how it will start. Summarize it for the judge. Check the precedents, come up with other precedents. And the judge now can walk into the courtroom and he or she can save time, right? Or the other thing I see happening, it's my last comment, is okay, for this category of misdemeanors, what's the recommendation from the computer?
Yeah.
I mean, wow,
yeah.
Right?
Well,
who's really running things?
Scary enough, it's happening, and it's been happening for a while. So
it's already happening.
There are some examples. For example, I believe it's Wisconsin v. Loomis, and this was actually in the late 2010s. Was the court used a basic AI, and used for sentencing guidelines, and it actually was not intended to do that. The tech company would have been the first to tell you that it was actually just to help a court determine the risk of recidivism, right? So the risk of repeating offenses. And I still think about this. It's one of the things we teach in our class at Columbia. Was the ramifications of that, using something that was not fit for purpose, and someone went to jail for it, went to prison. And so that's one example of many, unfortunately, that are starting to be uncovered. And unfortunately, they're often uncovered kind of after the fact, because people don't realize the ramifications of things as they're happening often.
Yeah. And if you're the victim of that, if you're a victim of that, it is like one of these movies that we like, but it's actually happening.
And the defense, both the attorneys for the defense and the defendant, were not allowed to see the algorithm.
Right.
And so
that's interesting.
Think about that as it interplays with what we think is the justice system and our right to see the information that our accuser has against us.
That's really interesting. It's almost like we'll be debating the algorithms.
And
the lawyers will be debating the algorithms.
Well, if you want to, and so let's extrapolate on that. That can go in a couple of very interesting directions.
Yeah.
When you hire a lawyer, both for yourself or for your company, does your lawyer understand algorithms? A few do.
The new ones will.
A few do.
Yeah.
And more will, but most don't, and most won't.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're following what we're saying, the future's changing now. And this is why I say technology has the ability to change everything right now. And I bring up that example I brought up before, in case this becomes a short, I'll say it again. I watched this interesting video that showed how dating occurs. And in the old days, the 60s, not that far away, in the 60s, we go the old days, caveman would just grab somebody and say, this is it. But in the recent older days, in the 60s, it happened through family. You met someone through family, you met someone through friends, you met someone through activities, church, work. Mm-hmm. And then as school happened, because if you go really back, and there was a different mix of males and females, and then the mix started happening, which is a good thing, everybody, and so then people were more mixed at college, and then more relationships occurred there. And now fast forward to the future, and now you're seeing it's all switched to online. And if you start at the beginning of the graph, when I say all, not all, but the preponderance is online. And when I say the graph started, online didn't even exist. So now we talk about, that's an example of how technology has changed. And if you go to that algorithm, it's serving up opportunity to you, right?
That's right.
Well, Why is that any different? It's the algorithm. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. It's
Hmm.
serving up whether my post or your post gets to more people.
Yeah.
Why is that any different about when you're now in the future traffic court? We'll just start with traffic. You ran the red light. Oh, Your Honor, I didn't run. Here's the picture. Right. That was the first stage, right? I got one of these in the mail the other day.
Yep.
Well, and I paid it, right? Okay. I didn't find it, even though I'm thinking about all this stuff. They sent it with my car and a picture.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you could argue whether that's legal or not. I've talked to people about it, all this stuff, but it wasn't worth my time. So I just
Hmm.
did it, and
Hmm.
it wasn't
Hmm.
a moving violation. It was just cash for the town. Now it's a little more serious, right, Alan? Now you're in court.
Yeah.
It's not like $20 or $50 for a ticket. It's whether you go to jail or not.
That's right. If you don't have those $300 to pay that, then you might go to jail instead, and then suddenly you're in the legal system through in a way that you didn't ever want to be. And
Yeah,
it's hard for folks who can't pay that ticket to then pay to get out of prison or jail. It can be really, debtors' prisons are back effectively, right?
that's it. That's a good way
And,
of saying it.
and
Yeah.
absolutely, one of my professors and mentors, Julia Brickle, this is the core concept that she was a
Uh,
practicing attorney for decades and is really a brilliant mind and has taught me a lot over my time in the last, several years. This is her core issue
which is,
is how once you're in the legal system as an offender, it dramatically affects the rest of your life. And how
it's hard to get out.
in terms of societal harm,
Uh,
the little things can really put you on a path that changes everything for you. And so you talked about kind of these small examples, the shift to a technocratic society was subtle. Was
yeah, it's already
uh,
there, is what you're saying. The,
that's right.
the building blocks are already there. Now what we're doing to be doing is automating it more and more and more. That's what you're
Yeah.
saying.
And so you think about these
I'm depressed.
ultra powerful individuals and companies
Yeah.
that now have global influence and affect the way
We
we live our lives and have dramatically changed society. I mean, it really, I think, is the topic of our time, or
I
should
think it
be.
is too. That's why I'm having this conversation with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And think about, at the time of this recording, the governor of California just vetoed an AI safety law. Most people think after probably he got off the phone with some of the leaders of the tech organizations that are based in
Right.
California.
That just happened this last week.
That's right. And so think about how that is now the technology is affecting the laws that govern our society.
Yeah. And then, I mean, by the way, we don't have any solutions to this on this podcast. Maybe Alan does. He's smarter than me. We already know that. But I just like to point out that this is everybody that's involved. Technology leaders need to be aware of this because there's a shift that's occurring in all phases of society. It's those who are providing the technology are not only getting paid for it, they are getting more authority and power by nature of it's the algorithm making those decisions
Yeah.
of how the services and goods are
And
provided.
getting back to your first question now, we're back at the beginning of the circle. Who
Who's
wrote
run?
that algorithm?
Yeah,
It was an
yeah,
individual or a team of people who are probably, young, as of today, still male,
yeah.
who have their opinions and the way that things could work. They are able to, because the algorithm and the coding is probably never going to be shared because it's protected by intellectual property law,
Yeah.
is probably never going to be known to anyone outside that organization. And so it's effectively a black box that is now beginning to more and more run society. So this is maybe why I shifted the dialogue that I'm having through my social media. Again, you talked about LinkedIn and other
Yeah.
venues as well. I speak on
Yeah.
this topic in public venues as well.
Interesting.
Is the technology ethics and in their intersection with business ethics. As you see ethicists at big companies like Google being fired, because they are throwing up their hands. And now we know, for example, the one of the founders of what we think of as AI and GPT, these folks are quitting the organizations because on philosophical grounds, because it's moving too fast or it's moving in directions that are too dangerous and no one's listening to them. So we're at a,
I mean, that's what we're, to
I
help
think
Alan
we've
here on
crossed
this
over
quote,
the
that's
event
what we're
horizon.
reading. That's what
Yeah.
we're reading. We don't
Yeah.
really know ChatGPT that it has billions of dollars.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're, and these are very poignant and relevant topics. Harper's Magazine, June of this year, had an
What they
article
say.
that I think really affected me called The Gods of Logic. Benjamin Lebetu, I
Yeah.
think, was the writer. And it really is how we've crossed the event horizon, I think, in terms of being able to get our hands around this and slow it or probably not stop it. But we're past that. And
And is this
so
the singularity that people talk about? Are we there yet? Where we
I
can't
think,
turn it off? Is that's what I'm hearing?
yeah, I think a lot of experts are saying that we're either there secretly. A lot of
Uh,
these organizations maybe aren't making that public just yet. Some of the estimations for, you call it singularity. There's other versions of that
yeah.
again, engineers use different language. I think we've crossed over that threshold,
Yeah.
and it's out there now
So let's end this on a positive note somehow.
somehow.
So I
Well,
think,
ultimately, it's an opportunity for us. I mean, you think about the conversation, the risk versus reward, the risk versus
yeah,
opportunity has not changed. And so the bigger the risk, the bigger the opportunity. Ultimately, there are still, I'm actually very positive for
good.
the most part. I think that there are opportunities for those of us who are in positions and have the positions that we've either built ourselves into or the positions that we're still striving for
Yeah.
to affect real change and real guidance for both our
In a
organizations,
positive way for the
the
world.
people in our
Yeah.
lives,
Yeah.
and society at large. So, the future leader of a company, maybe a tech company, maybe not, that is going to be in a position to have kind of a unique voice on these topics, maybe listening to this podcast right now.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
he or she is. There's
that's
somebody
right.
out there listening that is going to be in this position where they're writing that algorithm or they own the company that is affecting now millions of people.
That's right. And if you are or will be in a
Uh,
position of leadership or maybe on a board at a company where you're having to make these tough choices, there are those of us out there who can help you. You can leverage the experts who are out in society who are having these conversations, whether they be on technology ethics or the technology itself or related topics, and we're ready to guide. It is not just a black box.
yeah. Well, I am gung ho on technology also and technology leaders. That's why I do this. But I do think, like anything else, there are risks. And I think there are some big risks here. And it's great to have people like you, Alan, you know, saying, hey, this is great. Let's, we got to go back to our topic. What do we say the topic was? We go back to the topic of breaking barriers by bending the rules a little bit, which we see happening. But we're not saying break the rules. We're saying put the guardrails up.
I think,
And,
yeah, that's right.
right now we're just talking about, you know, where could things go in the future? And I have read the utopian stories too, which is, we're going to be able to provide more goods and services to people and equitably balance all that out. And that's all good too. I don't want to get into politics here. Um, but I do think there is some merit to that we're going to be like, there should be no hungry person in the world, that in the perfect ideal world, and at least in our country, I'll start there should be no hungry person. I mean, that would be the wonderful thing, and that would be a wonderful thing to happen. So we ought to strive for things like that where people have opportunity and are able to get food and shelter. And I think technology does have the ability in terms of society to help us with that. But I do think that your question of who is running the service I think that's a really important question. I think we're seeing the sand shift. I'll go back to your metaphor earlier. The sands are shifting, but the core services that we all need, we're still all human, are the same. Food, shelter, relationships, all these things are still out there. We need these core Maslow needs. So anyways, let's come back to Earth. Alan, it's been great talking to you. That was our little segment on the future and how technology is changing. I enjoy talking about that. I know you do.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Alex. Always
Yeah.
great to talk with you.
So we appreciate you. We appreciate you being on this again. Our guest today was Allen Darrah, CIO at Spencer Fane, a great law firm that's doing great work, growing like I'm going to say, I'm going to say this a nice way, growing like weeds everywhere. You're just growing. That's a good thing because you're serving a lot of people, which is great. And thank you so much. I want to remind everybody to watch all of our videos at our website, technologyexecutivesclub.com. They're all there now. In the near future, you'll also be able to see the entire video channel on our YouTube channel. And you can go there now and start to see a couple of them. We're starting to load them daily. And then listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's under Technology Executives Review. And don't forget on our site at technologyexecutivesclub.com, join our free Insiders Club. You can get newsletter. It goes out a couple days a week, and we'll tell you about all our different videos and everything else. And if you want to get involved and be a regular on our media network, ask us about our Board of Advisors program. The Board of Advisors is not just the Board of Advisors to me and the group, it's really the Board of Advisors, and Alan's on it, to the technology community. So if you want to be a regular on our show, this is how you do it. You get involved on our Board of Advisors program. It's a great way to help others while you expand your executive brand and build your network. Book a discovery call on our site. And everybody, thank you for attending. Don't forget to visit us at technologyexecutivesclub.com. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Alan, for being on today.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Alex.